Page 118 to 122. A stack of little griddle cakes, of a kind Priam had never seen before, of a golden yellow colour, and about the size of a medallion. The man, his Edeus, looked at them, he thought, rather regretfully. No doubt the fellow was hungry. With great courtesy the king said, "Please, do eat something yourself. The little cakes look good, and I have no objection." "Well, it's true, sir. I have taken nothing since early morning, and it's already after 5. He took up one of the cakes. "These little cakes. Now, since they've caught your eye, sir, pikelets they are, or griddle cakes, as some people call them, were made by my daughter-in-law. Best buckwheat flour, good thick buttermilk, just a drop of oil. The buttermilk has to be of a cream colour and thick, so that when you pour it out of the crock, it comes in a slow stream. Then the batter is ladled onto a skillet over hot stones. My son, the gods rest him, set the stones up in a new way, out of affection, you know, for my daughter-in-law, to make things easier for her, and so that the cakes would cook faster and be the sweeter for it. He was a clever fellow in that way, always thinking about things, and it has an effect. It really does. It's a real pleasure to watch the batter bubbling and setting and turning a golden brown, as you can see around the edges. The lightness comes from the way the cook flips them over. Very neat and quick you have to be. The daughter-in-law, she's a good girl, uses her fingers. It's a trick you have to learn. And if she happens to burn them, she pops her fingers into her mouth, quick smart like this." And by way of illustration, he popped one of the little cakes into his mouth. Almost unnoticed it might have been under the influence of his talk. You can taste the lightness. I've eaten 20 of these little fellows at a single sitting, not out of greed, sir, but for the joy they bring to the heart. The flavour comes from the buttermilk, but owes something as well, I dare say, to the good humour of the cook, and the skill, you know, of her fingers in the flipping. That too you can taste, but maybe for that you have to have been there to see her do it, so quick and light." And with thumb and finger not quite touching, he turned his hairy wrist in the air to give Priam some notion of it, but also to revive his own happy memory. "Are you quite sure, my lord, that you won't take just a bite of one?" When Priam shook his head, the man said, "Well, at least, sir, take a few drops of wine, to wet your mouth a little, and bless the occasion." Priam, who realized now that the man mentioned it that he was rather dry, but also because the fellow was so pleasant and persuasive, agreed to this, and Edeus, with a happy smile, passed him the flask. "There now," he said, as Priam took a modest swig, "that'll do you no end of good." And it was true. It did. Priam took another more copious mouthful. "You see, sir, a fellow like me, who needs his strength for hard work, has to know a little about what is good for the body as well as the spirit. Now, if you will allow the suggestion, my lord, not to be light-headed after the wine, you really should take a bite of something. It won't help our business if halfway along we get sick with faintness. A man needs to be practical about these things to help the spirit along, if you'll entertain the thought, sir, with a good comfortable feeling in the belly and the legs. There's no harm in that. If the one is to be considered, so must the other. We're children of nature, my lord, of the earth as well as of the gods." So it was that Priam, who did feel himself a little faint, but not without a fear that in this he might be compromising the purity of his mission, allowed himself to be persuaded, and took one of the little cakes in his fingers, broke off a morsel, and tasted. It was very good. What the driver had said of its lightness was true, and of its effect on the spirit. He finished the cake, but declined a second. Abstemiousness was native in him. He based a certain sense of his formal relationship to nature on his being not too dependent upon it, despite what the driver had said, and very pertinently, too, of their being doubly tied both to the gods and to the earth. When he set out on this business, he had understood quite clearly that he would be exposing himself to things he had not previously encountered. That was the price of the new. But as he sat now, with the golden taste of the pancake in his mouth and another drop of wine on his lips, he saw that what was new could also be pleasurable. The sitting with your feet in cooling water, for instance, that ran over them and away. The little fish that came to investigate and said, "Nope, nothing to be got out of this one." The wheeling and piping of swifts, which grew both in volume and excitement as the day's light thickened.